According to an Exponent 21 report from May of 2025, Google's AI overviews now appears in more than 50% of all search results, doubling since August of 24. This marks a major turning point where AI-powered summaries are becoming the dominant format in Google search, transforming the entire SEO landscape. With AI mode on the verge of becoming the default experience, this is only the tip of the iceberg of how it's impacting our industry. The traditional SEO strategies and tactics, even individual skill sets, must also evolve for us to stay relevant. Building trust in machine-generated content requires new approaches and prioritizations of these efforts. This is the Voice of Search podcast. My name is Tyson Stockton, COO and co-founder at Previsible, and today we're joined by SEO veteran Dwayne Forrester. Dwayne's the founder and CEO of unboundanswers.com, which helps businesses create innovative digital marketing solutions. Today, Dwayne and I will be discussing how to adapt our tactics and skill sets to be competitive and successful in this new age of SEO. Dwayne, welcome to the podcast.
Tyson, thank you. I appreciate the time today. Thanks.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I feel like a lot of these topics, we've heard from different perspectives. I've been looking forward to this one. You've been in the industry for quite some time. So I think you've seen fads, you've seen changes, you've seen how this industry kind of unfolds. And so I think you bring a lot of context and perspective into where are we going next. So I'm really interested to hear kind of that perspective from your side.
Look, dude, you are absolutely right. I am old. And, with that, kidding aside, it's true. Seen a lot, been there. Very fortunately for myself in my career, a large part of that was inside a search engine. So, my perspective is somewhat unique. There are not a lot of SEOs who have had that access. There are a slow trickle of folks in that area, but it did help shape some of the experience and understanding that I bring to this. So when I see what's going on, I have an inherent understanding of some of the dynamics behind the decision making within the companies on what they're doing and why they're doing it, or where a hang up or a problem might exist for them that they have to address or solve, and how that affects a timeline. Along with all of that, of course, I've spent so much time in this industry that you get a feel for the work, you get a feel for the people, the alignment, the concepts, what's resonating. You'd mentioned, this concept of like something that might have been a fad. We've seen a ton of that. And we've also seen a lot of stuff that, people called a fad that just became normalized. And because at the time you don't know, it's all new, it's all fresh, I recently had a conversation with someone where, they said, my head's going to explode. I can't keep up. The changes are too fast, too many. I don't know, if I can do this again. And it very much made me realize the feelings that I have been having over the last few years is that we are essentially in some ways back to the beginning of this industry. That feeling of it being the Wild West, we're experimenting. There is gatekeeping. People are not sharing what they know is working for them. And that may be, for competitive reasons, but it may also be because, we all also very much understand that something that works for me may not work for you for a variety of other reasons. So it's not as simple as just saying, hey, everyone, this works, you should do it. It's that is not necessarily the best presentation. We all know that now. But it's very much the Wild West again. We're learning new things. There are new concepts. And, look, with that, we'll call it wisdom accumulated over time, comes a certain level of exhaustion as well. You get burnt out, you get exhausted. It's tiring repeating the same things over and over and not watching people do the work. And yet here we are now. Suddenly everything is new. Suddenly there are are new words, phrases, concepts. Everything has changed.
Mm.
And all the old stuff still matters. You still got to know it. But we're leaning into this new at this point. We have to, because this is the undiscovered country. These are the concepts we haven't wrapped our heads around yet. I don't think I really need to tell anybody that structured data is important, or that, they have to have page load speeds that are good, or the quality of the content matters. I've been repeating that for 15 years. Now we've got to talk about chunking and retrievability and vector analysis and all of these different things that sound like made up phrases until you dive into the language of machine learning as an industry unto itself. Then all of a sudden you realize chunking's not a random phrase. It's a literal action that these systems perform. So
Mm.
exciting days. Super exciting if you like change. Air quotes exciting if you don't like change.
Which I feel like on that point, it's an interesting component because I've been in conversations with SEO that are very frustrated by the change. And I've been kind of
Mhm.
confused by that response because it's like part of at least the attraction to search from my side has been the level
Yep.
of constant change, the constant challenge of
Yeah.
what do you have to learn next? What's the next? And you're always kind of
Yep.
like, we inherently
Yep. Adding another
chose an
layer.
industry that's complex
Right.
and fast moving. So it's like for me, it kind of feels, I don't know, I'm more optimistic in this kind of next chapter because I feel a
Yeah.
greater level of awareness, a greater level of interest right now. There's a new spark in
Mhm.
the industry. So it's like, I get
Yep.
why there's a lot of concerns, especially some of the in-house sides where you're seeing
Yeah.
traffic numbers, be threatened.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, well, that's kind of how we ended up in SEO to begin with is constantly
Yeah.
learning, constantly
That's
challenging. It's like, this is why we're here. So might as well embrace it.
so you summarized it very well, because one of the ongoing thoughts I have in my own mind is, wait, you got into this industry and claimed that you love the fast pace and the constant learning. And now that that pace is faster and requires more consistent learning, you're telling me, no, that's too much. Mm, I get it though, right? I understand it. We all face this as individuals. We all face this, okay? Whether it's, you plateau with a hobby and you get to a point where, you have mastered it enough for your own needs.
Hmm.
And then it no longer holds the same kind of like, oh, if I turn my hobby into a business, it doesn't have the same allure to me. And so you don't pursue it as much. Fully understandable. It's a very human trait. And I think that the main difference at this stage is that, look, there was always continual learning, right? But the pace of the learning, if you were new to the industry, you had years to catch up with everybody else who had, a decade plus more experience than you. But you could catch up, and it was like pretty straightforward. I would say maybe 3 years ago, um, we we took a left turn off this straight highway we were on. And that left turn is a real shocker for people. There are lots of people now who are still learning SEO, who are moving forward, who will never see that turn that the rest of us went down. And they will continue off into the sunset on the highway of SEO. Um, don't know how long that highway exists in front of them, years at least. So so they're going to go very deep on that. The real challenge, though, is that left hand turn. The speed limit on that new highway is probably, well, I actually did some math around this. It's roughly 2 times whatever you were traveling at. And here's how I got there. I wrote an article about this where I talked about the pace of updates and changes. So if you go back and you track all of the Google updates and whatnot, and we'll toss Bing aside because I know this from firsthand experience, Bing doesn't do updates the same way. It has a very different approach to it. So there's not a sequential ongoing rollout. The impacts are not as large. Um, so we'll just focus on Google, and this isn't an attempt to villainize them on this point. But the fact of the matter is, we do have a cadence. It is consistent. People understand when it's happening. the results are noticeably differentiated. Way back in the day, the statement was always, less than 1% of the websites are affected and this kind of thing, and it always seemed kind of strange because you would hear from half a dozen people in the industry who were directly affected. And you're thinking, well, those half a dozen people work for companies that represent several hundred websites. So I'm not saying several hundred is 1% or more of the internet. I know it's not.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems really weird that I'm hearing from a fifth of that cohort that was impacted, and that is represented by a low number of people. Like, it just doesn't feel like less than 1%. But again, don't have the data, take it at face value. And the real thrust of it is, if you look at the rate of change, the updates that are happening across OpenAI, across Claude, across Perplexity, across all of the systems, Copilot, those updates are happening at a pace that is twice as fast as the traditional Google algorithmic updates. So those of us who turned left on this new highway now have to travel at a pace that is twice as fast as what we were used to. It's disorienting. It can be exhausting. You feel a higher level of stress more frequently. That discomfort over time wears you down. I take this back to, I would say maybe a decade ago. I turned all the ringers off on my phone and put people on my private list, where, like, if my mom calls me twice in a row, it'll break through my privacy settings and ring my phone. There are exactly 2 people on that list. Everybody else, you can just send me a text or wait. I'll see the message, and there we go. The reason I did that was because I was starting to feel a bit of PTSD reacting every single time my phone went off, because I had the ringer turned on for Slack at work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was plugged into so many different things. It was every 20 or 30 seconds, something was lighting up. My company was sending 15,000 Slack messages a day. I had to turn the ringer off, or I was having a physiological response every time my phone vibrated or every time the ringer went off. And I was like, I got to do something to calm that down, because, like, that's not good. And humans generally end up feeling the same way when it's new information, when it's overload for even old information. We work at a certain level. Some of us are 8-bit computers. Some of us are, maybe a little more advanced than that, a TRS-80, Commodore 64, maybe. And then there's some, like, Mac 2s floating around out there and whatnot. But we have a limit. And I think that when we hear people saying they're exhausted, they can't keep up, this is difficult, the pace of change is too much, I think that's all we're really seeing and hearing. Not negating any of that. They're right. It's all true. But, it is down to an individual thing. I have kind of just stopped watching television, and that time that I would have put into that medium is now learning AI things and diving in on AI and exploring different topics and learning how to use systems and all of that. Kind of had hoped that, as I got further into my career, things would slow down and get easier, and just, like, you eventually get on the white horse and ride off into the sunset and the happy music plays. Like, that was kind of how I assumed career paths went. And no, not even close. Not with AI on the scene now, not in our industry. And I think what's really important about that as well is, some of us, me, you, many others in the industry, are kind of the author of our own drama, right? And here we are sitting here talking about this, and we're going to cover things, and people are going to feel some angst around these ideas and these topics and these thoughts. Like, Like, are we a part of the problem? Maybe. But I'd much rather take the shot and share the knowledge and the experience that I have with people through this new lens rather than say, oh, don't worry about it. There's nothing to see here. Off we go. Because personally and fundamentally, I believe there is a crap ton to see here. There is like everything to see here. Like, if you just showed up 3 years ago and said, oh, I'm going to learn SEO now, and you were on this track, you were on the road that turned left, and you could keep up, you will over time be able to backfill that historic knowledge. You better be pragmatic enough to know what you don't know, because you'll make a lot of simple mistakes moving forward, and you'll do them at a pace and with a confidence that is pure danger. However, you know, I think that there are going to be a lot of people that are going to thrive now. Like and you've seen some of the stuff on my Substack, Tyson. Like, I do a lot of talking about careers, career paths, new titles, work alignments, like all of these types of things. I have an article that will be out probably in the next 48 hours or so, as we're recording this. And that one is looking at a study that Microsoft did that shows the direct effect on job types. They track 40 different jobs, the work that those things do, and how that work overlaps with the work that AI can reliably do. And in some of those cases, that work overlap, that job and the tasks that job has to complete are overlapped by 98% with AI, which effectively means that job can be replaced by an AI system today reliably. That is going to be shocking to some people. I've taken that and translated that to SEO jobs. So writer, content producer, that type of thing. And I'm going to give some guidance in there. I'm going to talk about, like, this is not the end of the world. This is not the end of something. This is simply a moment to pivot. And here's how you pivot. Here's what you focus on moving forward. But, the days of romanticizing, I like to be a writer, and just give me a topic and let me go write, 900 words on it. That's not really a career path moving forward. And if that's what you want to do, you need to wrap your head around the new reality, right? And look, as we're recording this, we're living in the world of ChatGPT 4.5, 4.1 on the research side, like all of these kinds of things. And we know that probably within the month of August, they're going to release ChatGPT 5. And that's going to reset the bar. And we're talking in terms of OpenAI's product, right? But, let's not be so myopic about it, right? When we talk about advancing these models, we know Google is advancing its models. And then we know that Perplexity is advancing its models. Claude is doing the same thing. Mistral is doing the same thing. When ChatGPT steps forward, Copilot steps forward. Like all of these things are the reality that everyone with a career in this industry, we're staring down that. And you like, core concepts really matter right now, and understanding those things matter. We do live in a different time. We talked about how it feels like a bit of a Wild West, like the original beginning of the SEO industry felt like a bit of a Wild West scenario. We couldn't get answers. We had to reverse engineer a lot of stuff. We were guessing, maybe we were sharing, maybe we weren't, like all of that back and forth. And I feel like we're kind of back to that now. Major difference, though, is you can actually ask these systems, how do you do what you do? Why do you make the decisions you make? What information are you taking in? What should I focus on if I want this to be my outcome? And I'm not saying that it's perfect with answering, but it's a heck of a lot closer than anything we've had in the history of our industry before. And yeah, I'm including even when I used to walk on stage for Bing and answer people's questions, when Google still does this today, because there are parameters within which every representative has to stay. You can't just walk out there and say what you feel, say what you learned. That's proprietary stuff. But these systems, because the how they do chunking and what retrieval looks like and how vector embeddings work and how a knowledge graph operates. These are all public domain concepts. They came from open sourced concepts originally. So you can ask and get an answer and then ground your knowledge in how these systems work. And then you have to apply it to, in our case, the historical knowledge we have for SEO. If you're new to the industry, you're going to apply it to the other things you still have to learn about SEO.
Mm.
So, like, it's this combination. We're all bakers now, all of a sudden, you know?
Yeah, and in a lot of ways too, I agree that we're seeing this kind of like resurgence, and it's, some say it's like, oh, Groundhog's Day, and it's like, it's a different flavor though, so it's like some
Yeah,
uniqueness obviously to it.
yeah,
But like, I think for myself personally, that's why I'm a really strong advocate in pushing people into more of like getting to some of the theoretical aspects of it, because to me some of
yeah,
those are going to be more longer standing, more universal. You learn these different concepts and then you
yeah,
can apply them to a variety of scenarios or like manifestations of
yes,
that piece.
yeah.
Maybe kind of before, and I would want to get into those skill sets in your article, but like kind of before
Right.
that, in your perspective, what are some of those core kind of like fundamentals that you'd recommend for someone to, if they haven't learned already, to dig into as being like evergreen pillars that they can build on top of?
Okay. So, purposely for this conversation, Tyson, I'm going to ignore most of what we would talk about in terms of core traditional SEO concepts. I'm just going to work from the assumption here that if I just made that statement and you don't know what it means, you can go look those up, and there's all kinds of foundational information around them. If you do understand it, then you don't need the grounding in that, and we should kind of move forward. Um, Notable exception in there, though, is going to be structured data. You know, I walked on the stage. I introduced schema.org to the world at one point, and was underwhelmed with the adoption. And it's really been the last few years that the curve of adoption has like done that hockey stick thing, because everybody moved to knowledge graphs, and suddenly this was a way to have a trust signal wrapped around something, and there was value in it. So now I could propose it to my IT team or whoever and get sign off on getting the work done, and there we go. Um, and along the way, these systems that we're using today became, I don't want to say dependent, but they are consumers of structured data in whatever format that's available. They definitely use it for making decisions. So, look, if there's one core skill set that I'm going to tell you that you need to understand, it's structured data and the purpose of structured data and how to deploy it, which is going to kind of bring me to like this other skill that I think everybody needs if you're an SEO. And it's kind of an age old skill. It's the idea of um, storytelling, being able to explain things internally to your boss, your coworkers, your dev team, your CIO, anybody who has a vested interest in time invested for a return on that time. You have to be able to very clearly articulate to them why you are recommending what you are recommending. And structured data is one of these things because it's not a binary. It's not a one for one. If we do this, we get that. It's literally, if we do this, we might, and after that, everybody stops listing, right? Because might is not a strategy. So, so you have to have a skill of being able to intelligently, factually, and quickly distill the importance of all of these tangentially related items into a cohesive concept that everyone gets. What we are doing is complex, but if we do all of these things, we increase our likelihood of X being, you're cited in an answer, or you are the answer, or in traditional search, you're at the top of the rankings, or you're in the answer box or whatever. So you have to be really good at that. Um, I would also recommend the concept of budgeting becomes something that every SEO wraps their head around. And I'm not just talking about dollars and cents, right? Like, we all know that, lemonade at the lemonade stand in the summertime costs $5 a glass. And if you've got $10 on you, you can buy one for you and treat a friend. Everyone gets this kind of budgeting. Or I'll buy one now and then I'll come back later and buy a second one because I have $10 and one costs 5, and like super, super simple. But the concept of budgeting time is far, far more complex for people. And that time directly translates into dollars or opportunity for the business. So you have to be really good at being able to look at the work and understand the budget. Whether that is your time or you're going to ask the IT department to go do this work and what that looks like. When I worked at Microsoft, there were very specific groups. I was a PM, it was a PM and a PM. So it was like project management, program management, like pick your PMM. Along the way, I was also PMM. And so point being is that those were different groups within the company. They were functionally organized silos, which meant I did not have the engineers in my group. My group was PM. So when I needed to get something done, I had to go to the lead engineer that I was assigned to work with, and I had to budget within all of the work that they were assigned where my work would fit, which meant I had to help them prioritize what the return was going to be on their time invested, because they were responsible for their time being invested. I was responsible for making sure that they were investing in something that was going to return for us. Like it's all of that type of layering. And I'm using the Microsoft example where it's big and it's hairy and it's, all of that. But this is the smallest of companies face the same thing. Limited number of resources. What are you going to do with them? You need to figure that out. Critical. And if you want to get into some more like hard things, you do have to understand how knowledge graphs work, what they are. And if I get on one more meeting and somebody says, oh yeah, no, I know what a knowledge graph is. And what they mean is, I've heard the phrase knowledge graph before. Okay, go learn what a knowledge graph is and how it functions, because then you'll understand its core utility within traditional search at the top end of that hierarchy. Okay? You have to understand concepts like chunking, that an LLM system kind of loses track on long form content, right? It's kind of like an idiot reading. They just kind of lose the plot and then they drift off, right? And then they don't even finish, right? They just go, oh, I'm drifting, I'm out, and they leave. And whatever else you wrote down there, lost. They've never seen it, However, what they did do, coming back to concepts from knowledge graphs, entities and relationships, is they did actually go through the information they had there and they attempted to identify an entity. Tyson's an entity. Relationship. He knows Dwayne. Oh, okay. Well, if the query is about, does Tyson know anybody in the SEO industry? Well, the answer to that is Tyson knows Dwayne. Not because the phrase Tyson knows Dwayne was written anywhere, but because the system came in and semantically understood, oh, there's an entity, Dwayne, Tyson. There's a relationship. They were on a show together. The question, does Tyson know Dwayne? Yes, Tyson knows Dwayne. Now, we haven't gotten into, are they besties? What's the depth here? That's the next entity and the next relationship and so on down until it loses the plot and it just screws off into the ether and doesn't bother with your long form content. So the whole concept of chunking is based around make it easy. Make it easy for the system, the LLM crawler, to come in and say, oh, there's an entity and there's relationships. Got it. Okay. Now, the relationship might not be everything. Okay. The relationship in the content that we are notionally referencing here is not everyone on earth that Tyson knows and Dwayne is in the list. Okay. Could be that. or it could just be the write-up for this podcast, nothing more. But that's what got pulled, and there's the answer. So this idea of chunking now becomes a really important part of this, okay? So what we were just talking about is much more in the vector embedding concept. Now, from that, or technically before that, you have to, as a content producer, think about chunking your content to make it easier for that LLM to consume. So you would have a paragraph. If the content is all the people Tyson knows, then the paragraphs would be Tyson knows Dwayne, Tyson knows this person, Tyson knows this person, and so on. It's a little pedantic for humans to read that type of thing, but again, this is your human in the loop. This is why, you may take all of this content that you've factually written and you've even marked up with structured data, and you may just turn around and give that to an LLM and say, keep this intact so that it's chunked for an LLM, but make it more consumable for a human. And it'll give you a reasonable approximation of something like that. But again, human in the loop, you've still got to get in there, you've got to do your thing, and ultimately make a decision. Who is it that you want to appeal to more? What's the goal behind this? So the concept, another concept that I think people really need to focus on is goal orientation, is defining goals for specific pieces of content. We were pretty good at this in SEO, where, we were like, here's a keyword or here's a topic, here's the content on it, build the pages, and off you go. And then, suddenly you've got a 100,000 page website, and that's your website. It's very much not like that with LLMs. Like, you could literally just throw up random web pages with buckets of content on them and throw them into paragraphs and chunk them out, and it'll fill in all the blanks from there. Right? Bit of a dog's breakfast for you and I coming by to read it, where like they couldn't bother. Like, could you like maybe paragraph this crap? Like, But for the LLM, like anyone who's used ChatGPT or any of the systems, your typing is atrocious. I understand it, as is mine. You don't go back and spell check. You don't make the changes. It still knows what you're asking. It doesn't lose the context. Like, so it's really good with kind of like crap layout, right? It can manage that. I urge people, I wrote an article, or I created a product. It's a quadrant chart that compares, I think 34 or 35. I've got another 4 or 5 products I need to add to it. These are all AI SEO tool sets, and I rank them on a quadrant map to, against 36 points on each scale, and how do they score on this, right? One scale is largely about trustability, and the other is about utility. So features and, is it reasonable that they're going to do what they claim they're going to do? And off you go. It's a starting point for people to look at tools and say, well, like if I want to narrow it down to a half a dozen to put my time into, like, where do I start? And my advice wholeheartedly to every single person is, you start with everything that's above the halfway mark and higher, because that's a signal of more along the concept of trustworthiness. The horizontal is just features. So if you're high on trust and low on features, you're going to be in the top left quadrant. But if you want to score higher and your product plan shows you're going to put another half a dozen features out, you're suddenly going to jump closer to the top right quadrant because you have more features. And you have to execute on them. They have to be good, like they have to be real and all that kind of thing. But the point behind all this is there are a bunch of tools out there, and there are lists of these tools, and you need to start digging in. You need to put time on your calendar to get demos of these tools. You need to have a clear understanding of the goals for your program so that you can understand if the tool can give you information that gets you on the path to that goal. Like, it's these are not the days of, like, I mean, I grew up in this industry. I've built and launched webmaster tools for Bing. So like the concept of a tool set that just gives you all this data, and we kind of know what that is, whether it's Ahrefs, SEMrush, Conductor, like all of the big names, those are kind of like the foundational things, right? And what we're talking about right now, we're talking about, do we replace the shingles on the roof with a metal roof? Do we go with clay tiles? We're not talking about foundation anymore. We're talking about the top edge. We are the front edge of this stuff. And it turns out if you haven't paid attention because like your roof generally lasts 25 years, so you don't know what advances have happened in material sciences that are used in these products, you won't know any of these new tools.
Mm.
Like there are three tools that if I didn't personally know the people who built them, I would look at them and go, "Oh, that's a dumb name." And just like I'd write it off, right? Because I'm like, what the hell
Yeah.
does that even mean? Like, how do we even pronounce that? Like, but then, you have friends and they build things and they're like, hey, I want to show you this. And you go through and you see the reporting and you see the type of information that they can give you based on the data they're gathering. And you're like, oh, you can use that for decision making. And here you go. So absolutely, you have to put time on your calendar to go get demos of these new tools and learn what is useful in the tool. Now, you can't just take the tool's word for it that if it's in the tool, that's the important part. Because again, if you look at things the way I do, like fewer features is less utility. More features is more utility. I don't know anybody buying a tool who doesn't want more utility. But just to be clear, there's a point in time here where there's a diminishing return over here on the right-hand side, right? Where, we've all seen this, you buy a tool, you get access, you use it for one thing, 70% of the tool you don't use, and you'd be just as happy if you could pay less money for what you do use. So, like, it's important, right? I feel like we're entering the era here of we are not going to have one tool where we go and we do whatever it is we do, or one tool that does 60% of what we want to do. No, we are going to have 4 or 5 tools.
Yeah.
And that's what the new tool stack is going to look like. So you better start learning now what the tools are capable of and ask all of the people, share your product pipeline with me. Tell me what you intend to build in the future. And they should be able to share some sanitized version of that, right? Well, we'd like to add this feature, and this feature. They're not going to tell you everything. They can't do that. Shouldn't expect it. They're not going to go into detail. When you ask them, oh, can you explain more about that? You should expect them to say no. Because again, this is proprietary, this is competitive, and they're not going to give that away. However, they should be able to articulate a growth plan for the product. So that will help you know, oh, okay, got it. So you do have a plan for the next 18 months to be investing in this thing. So if I tell my company to invest now and we're using it and basing decisions on the output of the data, it's reasonable that there's some runway here, right? So, that kind of thinking. But I will say that kind of critical thinking is extremely important here. All right. Because look, if there's a concept or a topic you don't understand, just go ask one of the LLMs. Be very clear and pedantic and deep in your query. And it'll like 80 to 95% get you exactly what you need to give you the knowledge you need to understand that phrase or that concept. And then you can obviously level up and continue from there. But some of these skills these are going to come from within, right? And again, if you're exhausted, yeah, you got to find another gear because the race isn't over yet.
100%. And with the tool point too, it's like, I think that's fair and really relevant in a lot of industries. It's like, you're not going to build a house with one hammer, but you might have your favorite hammer and there's going to have the utilization, purpose, and everything
Absolutely.
else behind it. But then
Yep.
I think, as you've been saying that too, there's a natural just kind of evolution then of where I think our time and focus needs to go more towards. And that's going to be in
Yeah.
that critical thinking, that strategical elements, these other areas. And going back kind of even further to, you made the comments of, chunking, how LLMs might look at that, how a human might, which then
Mm-hmm.
I think poses the question, how do you see the industry unfolding in the sense of, are we targeting now for our information to just be surfaced in some other environment, some other experience, or how much is designed for the user within your own house? Like, are
Yeah.
you building the furniture that's going in someone else's house, or are you building
Yeah.
the house that you
Right.
want people to come into?
So this concept Tyson, is like so near and dear to my heart, right? Because we're really looking forward with things. Um, I talk about this in some of the earliest articles I put up on my Substack, and it's worth kind of conceptually revisiting where we're at right now. So, okay. Um, you want to be found, you want to be engaged with. I'm first off, I have to say, I don't think throughout all of this, even looking into the future, I don't think SEO goes away. Um, I think the acronym, as we know it, search engine optimization, is going to be archaic, and SEO is going to assume new meanings as we continue to evolve, inevitable. So I think for the reasonable lifespan of all of us, we can continue to call this work SEO and everyone will understand what it means, regardless of the platform or the landscape across which you are doing this, right? Um, Although if somebody can come up with, a good acronym that accurately encompasses it all, that isn't already obviously attached to other concepts in humanity's existence, I'm looking at you, Geo, then I'm all for it, right? I mean, bring on the new acronym. But for now, SEO.
Yeah, just not
The
geo.
the reality. Well, yeah, exactly, or anything not geo. Like, personal thing, I really don't care. If somebody wants to call it geo, go for it. We know what we're talking about. Um, but the point here is how we get our information is changing. That's the bottom line here. And I don't mean you get it from ChatGPT. Okay, what I mean is in the world around us. I'd like to ask the audience, raise your hand if you've ever had a smart speaker, okay? Because pretty much everybody in the audience is going to raise their hand. They're going to raise two hands and they're going to say, I have 7 of them and I still love them and blah, 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 blah. Whatever. I don't really care. The fact of the matter is we had this tech. This tech came into our lives and it gave us another way to actually retrieve information. I could just ask my question aloud, get the answer. And whether it's a smart speaker or it's the intelligent assistant on your phone, who I'm going to air quote intelligent because I still think Siri's an idiot. But this change is already underway. Okay. Now we've got to look at things like, I'm a big fan of Meta Ray-Bans. I've had them for years. I had my prescription lenses added to mine. Use them all the time as regular glasses. It's frankly, for a piece of technology that is as simple as it is in construction, right? It's a pair of glasses. There's not a lot of real estate to work with here. It's staggeringly impactful in your everyday life. It is an amazing step forward for a user interface. I don't know. I'm not really going to make the claim that that's the new user interface. It replaces our phone and blah, blah, blah. I think we're like several generations away from replacing our phones. I mean, I will be buried with mine, to be clear, right? So you're going to need a couple generations after me who want to get away from a phone, basically. So I don't think that we have a wholesale replacement coming. But what does happen is, if I can see an object, ask my glasses to give me an answer about that object, and it will talk into my ear and give me what I want, I don't need anything else. I got the answer that I wanted. And the more people that try this, the more experiences they have with it, the more they like it, the more they tell two friends who tell two friends, the more impact that has on where answers show up and how answers show up. Right now, Meta Ray-Bans are audio only. They're not a system where they're showing you something on the screen. They're not equipped to do that, but they can take video, and then that video maps to my app. So if I open my app, I can look through my glasses on the app and see things in an AR instance. I think we're going to see a lot more of this. We're going to see there's a battle for the dashboard that's always ongoing in our automobiles, and Google and Apple are right in the middle of it, and they are trying to take over dashboards in people's automobiles because they want to give you the seamless experience and they want to own your life end to end. Ask your question in the living room, continue it in the kitchen, go get in your car, same conversation. They own all of that, share of mind, share of market, basically. If you look at what's happening in the world of local, these systems are capable, because of the data gathering on our devices, of a staggering amount of insight into, not just like time of day and day parting, and oh, you go to Google Maps and you see, oh, it's busier now more than normal, or it's not as busy as it normally is, and this is $2 signs and that's $1 sign. That's all great and really useful, but that's kind of like the nascent version of where we started. um, you know we're stepping into a world for local businesses where local businesses are going to need to be contextually aware of their neighborhood and everything going on in their neighborhood. Because if Banksy shows up in my neighborhood and paints something on a wall down the street from me, I need to be able to talk about that on my local footprint. Because consumers who want to follow Banksy or do follow Banksy or want to go to that location and get a photo with that new mural are suddenly within 100 feet of my door. And I damn sure want them to come in for a coffee or a pickle juice or a croissant or whatever I'm selling. But if I'm not aware of what's going on in my neighborhood and I'm not broadcasting that out as a part of my business, I miss that moment. And these are critically important things, because my assistant, ChatGPT, when I ask it, hey, I'm visiting New York for a few days, this is where my hotel is, what's fun and going on around me right now, use live search to find the latest information. When it does that, it's going to pull up that Banksy painted on the wall. It's not going to pull up that you've got great coffee and you've got a 4.9 out of 5 on 1,000 reviews. You're not getting included that way. But if you're talking about Banksy, suddenly now you're relevant to what my AI is filtering back to me. So, like, we have a lot of change happening, and we haven't even touched on generationally. Younger people are using Google less, and they're using things like TikTok more for discovery. TikTok is opening an entire ads group. I saw something this morning. They were saying there's something like 122 jobs open in their ads division. And that's like paid advertising on TikTok. They actually are leaning in on localization with TikToks. Like, they're going to explore all of these things. And whether TikTok stays or not, you've got to understand that it's in Meta's best interest, which is Instagram and Threads. It's going to be in LinkedIn's best interest to lean in with data in these ways. Like, all of these things are really, really important. So it's no longer just, oh, Google owns the SERP and, that's how I get my traffic. That's a part of it. But as I get older and my kids grow up and become more of the everyday consumer, I can guarantee you a single thing: those kids will not listen to their parents' music. And that holds true culturally, generation to generation to generation. I've got my music. My parents had their music. Sure, we listen to each other's music. But when I really want to get into the nostalgia and grab my feels, it's the 80s. That's the decade. It's not the 50s. That's my parents. So the same thing is going to happen with our biggest brands, with our biggest search platforms, right? I have a friend who tells this story. His daughter had a kind of like a bring your parent to school day, right? It was, he came in and it was like, what do you do? And he says, oh, yeah, I work in internet marketing and I help businesses rank highly on Google. And immediately, girl in the front row, he knew who she was. He's one of his daughter's friends, right? She raises her hand and she says, what's Google? I hear my parents talk about it all the time and they use it as a verb, but I don't know what it is. And he said, my life split at that moment. And he said, a part of me recognized the futility of my future and a futility of everything I've done in the past and how this is the end of everything in my world. And he said the other part of me had to explain to her what a search engine was and how you find information. And she said, I talk to my friends, I use TikTok and I use Snap. And then he said that took me right back around to my funk about, here's a 9-year-old and they don't actually understand how Google operates, or they don't go there, in their own words. And that becomes a problem 10 years from now, not even 10 years from now. That becomes a problem because when that 9-year-old becomes an adult with an income and is a purchaser and makes their own decisions, they will be sticking with the areas that they're comfortable with, listening to their music, not listening to their parents' music. This is a problem. Facebook had to face this. They bought Instagram. Instagram is now facing this. Threads. Threads is going to face this. LinkedIn won't face it because LinkedIn is all about career. So it's all about you young, you old, doesn't matter. It's career, and that's okay. All right. X, I don't think X cares. So X is X, right? Like it's a very interesting melting pot. But point being is that and all of those systems, right? Like we want to call out Snap, we want to call out TikTok, we want to call out these kind of new spaces. They're all going to run through their own version of this eventually. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. Okay. The real challenge, though, and this is what these LLMs are bringing forward, right? Like I'm excited for GPT-5 because I need the idiot edges of 4.5 to go away, right? Like I feel sometimes like I'm working with a really smart 7-year-old. They have access to the world's knowledge and information. They will lie to me when they don't know something because they want to please me and they think that's more important than facts. And they're embarrassed by not knowing a lot of facts. So they lie somewhat frequently. Like it, you know, and it's incumbent on me to know all of that information so that I can pull the truth and useful from the fictitious, you know? I want 5 to get beyond that. Like I need a nice semi-sentient 24-year-old that knows the difference, you know, like isn't really looking for that approval. And just like when I give it the rules, it like, okay, I'll follow those rules. Like that's what I need 5 to be. We'll see. And if it's not 5, then you know what? It's going to be 6. And if it's not 6, it's going to be 7. Like it's inevitable and we will get there. When that happens, or I guess along the way, what ends up happening is all of these users build an affinity for that platform, whichever one they've chosen, whichever one they're using at the time. And the more affinity you have and the more history you build with it, the harder it is for you to incorporate anything from anywhere else. That's, again, a very natural human thing. You know, like, are you a Pandora guy or are you a Spotify guy? I'm a Spotify guy. And I don't care what offers, deals, or anything Pandora's talking about. You're not getting me. I'm Spotify. I've built playlists. I understand the interface. I've got it plumbed in everywhere. Passwords are already in. I'm just lazy. So I'm happy with what I have, and that's it. Again, human nature. And LLMs are extremely good at pulling out the threads of human nature and appeasing them. So I do think that, you know, we're going to see a lot of change with these systems and platforms. We are going to see a lot of shift. And I don't know that Google's influence in search, I can't help but think that the percentages are going to start to come down. And that's obviously going to be a problem for the company. However, I think that they are very uniquely poised to go through this hybrid period and come through with a credible answer, right? It's not particularly hard to build a traditional search engine. Not now, not today. Like any of us could do it. But ChatGPT hasn't done it. Perplexity's kind of sort of done it. Claude hasn't done it. Like, you know, they're more interested in the humanistic aspects of AI than the commercial aspects of it as a company. So they're not looking that way. And so that kind of puts Google in a position where, you know, it's very easy. I don't say very easy, but they have all the components they need to take that lead essentially and become that, like, hey, there was traditional, then there was hybrid, and now there's AI. Like if that's the path we're on, the arc that we appear to be on with the evolution of search and SEO, yeah, they're really well poised for that, you know, like they've got everything they need to get there. So I'm excited, I'm optimistic, but I'm also pragmatic about it, you know, and it's extremely hard for practitioners and for businesses and pretty much anybody who relies on revenue that originates from search. It's extremely hard to sit down in a boardroom and go, we're going to make decision A because we believe future A, and off you like, because any day now we're going to get ChatGPT 5, and what if it's a functional 30-year-old? Like, holy crap. Like, like whatever you do at 6, I'm not really worried about it, because functional 30-year-old beats genius 7-year-old all day long.
Well,
And yet,
like in that same vein too, it's like, yeah, we don't know for certainty what tomorrow or the next week will bring in that sense. But it's like,
mhm,
I do feel like, and kind of bring the conversation around, you have your safe
yeah,
bets to invest in, which is
yes,
like,
yeah, I would agree.
if a kid's going through school, it's a safe bet that they should learn how to read and write. We don't know how the world's going to change,
100%,
but that
100%.
skill set can
Yep.
then be applied and built upon. And I think like that's the way that we should be looking at kind of the industry, is what are those fundamental skills that we need to then build on top of. And
Yeah.
where you kind of, going back to earlier in the conversation, I think it's also
Mhm.
fair and valid in a human side to also recognize that it's like, yeah, it can be exciting, I can be optimistic. We're also
Yeah.
people too, and it's fair to say that it's like, yeah, I've been grinding out for the last 15 years on this. Like, it's also, I
Yeah.
think people can give
Yeah.
themselves that
Yeah.
break to be like, I'm tired.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm tired. I've been
Oh,
running
look,
a long time.
I don't think a single person, I think it's completely valid if you're sitting here right now with a career in this industry and you're feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, and you're questioning life's choices. I think you're exactly where you should be. I think that's completely valid. And honestly, I think every single one of us, if we're being truthful, is going to admit we're there, or we were there, or we were about to go there. Like, again, it's all on a curve, and that's the reality. Um, I think that the fundamental skills that you learned as an SEO, or a content developer or a programmer, I think those things are hugely valuable. I think they are core. Layer on AI, everything you plus AI, right?
Hmm.
That increases your productivity, that increases your ability to research and learn. Keep critical thinking on all of it. You can't usurp your agency. Like, you don't give it to the system and trust 100% what it gives back to you. I mean, literally editing one of my articles today, I went through and said, I'm not sure about this phrase. Is there a better way to say this phrase? And it goes, oh yeah, and it gives me the example of it, and it quoted from the document I uploaded. It quoted the sentence that I wanted changed back to me, but changed the sentence in the quote and said, here's what you wrote. And I'm like,
Mm.
I did not write that. Here are the words in the document. The document is attached. You have it. I don't know how you got there. Like, you control, right? That's the thing. And that is still exhausting because you're still in charge. You don't get to, here's the steering wheel, someone else drive for a little bit. Nope, still you. Still you navigating, still you pressing the gas pedal, still you making decisions on braking, still you deciding where you're going to go, still you pulling over, putting gas in the tank, all you. But
100%.
a lot of those things, it's helpful to have an assistant for. So, everything you've learned, everything you know for your discipline, and this falls neatly in line with the concept of human in the loop. That's not a phrase that I made up. That is a phrase from the LLM, the machine learning industry. The concept of human in the loop is incredibly important, right? It's you with a layer of AI. That's it. Think of it as your superhero cape, and go forth and be the superhero version of you. That's what we're talking about. And it's a little bit of change, a little bit uncomfortable, but I think the rewards are absolutely going to be there. In fact, I can see a lot of people in this industry ending up moving their careers forward because they will be the first people in their companies, their organizations, their teams who truly became AI fluent. And everyone else is like, oh, I don't know, let's hold back, I don't want to learn, no, don't go do that.
Mm.
And these are also the same people, by the way, who advocated blocking LLM crawlers. Oh, no, 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 they can't come in here because they'll take our stuff and they'll use it. And then that's ours, it's proprietary information. It's the description of a screwdriver that you sell. That is not proprietary information that you need to protect. But I guarantee you, if you want sales in the future, you have to have that crawler accessing your URL. Because if they can't, then it won't be your screwdriver they talk about in the answer, period. So, like, we've kind of seen some of that evolution now, but there are a lot of people who are still on that no block side. And it's like, you need to be on the no access, and here's why. Here's how that impacts our business. Here's how this action supports our company goals. You move yourself forward by adopting all of this. That's my firm belief.
Absolutely. And I mean, I feel like I could keep on this topic for quite some time, but I do want to hit on some kind of more like lightning round type questions, not to keep you too long
Go
here.
for it.
But I'm going to throw a kind of series of more shorter form questions at you. They'll have a theme to them, and then we can kind of riff off kind of each of those. But so
Cool.
the first question here is going to be around buying or selling. So how much you are believing that is the thing, I'm willing to invest in it. But the question would be, are you buying or selling that retrieval-based search makes traditional keyword research obsolete?
I would sell on that. And here's why. And that assumes I know how I'm applying my words here. Okay. I don't believe traditional keyword research is obsolete. I believe it's changing its function. Keywords are great and obviously still utilized for traditional search. Okay. But the concept of query fan out, so the larger, like if you want to talk to me about camping equipment and you want to talk about a sleeping bag, you're probably going to want to talk about a pillow. You're probably going to want to talk about a tent. You're probably going to want to talk about a ground sheet, all these other ancillary things that are related to it. So if it's me investing my team's time, I am not telling them go do traditional keyword research, go look up a word and so on. I am telling them go do topic research, start with these keywords, go broader. That's that right there. That is where I'm saying. So I don't know if that's a buy or a sell. Am I buying that?
I think you're selling in that case, where it's like it is a gray area.
Okay, then I'm selling.
Maybe
I'm selling this idea. I'm selling this idea that it needs to expand. There we go.
It's like a lease.
I do not buy the idea that traditional keyword research is all you need.
Well, and it's I think really good advice, because the risk I see with traditional research is it leads especially like younger SEOs into thinking more closed-minded and very like surface level, rather than, like you said, the query fan out. How does, like, what's the collection of topics? Because especially getting into more LLM search based, it's like you are not going to be able to predict all the different nuances of how someone's going to input one prompt versus another. It's like there's too many combinations in that sense. So it's like,
so here's a fun exercise.
Identify those topics.
If somebody wants to argue that traditional keyword research is all you need, ask them to go to a party with their friends on Friday night and make note of how many conversations they have that are keyword based versus how many of them look more like people also asked. I guarantee you it's an eye-opening exercise. Because as much as they want to start with a keyword, it's going to evolve. Like instantly, it's going to evolve much broader than that. It's the nature of it. If we start talking about Star Trek, it's inevitable we start talking about Star Wars. Inevitable.
Yeah.
Like you get there. I mean, it just happens. And I realize you're going to get a lot of hate on this one because of that statement.
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I actually think that it's something that a lot of us at some level have hopefully already accepted. It's like, I think it's going to be one of those things that fast forward a couple of years, it's not even going to be a question.
No, but okay, here's what's fascinating about that, right? As we stretch out the lightning round, what's really fascinating about that, Tyson, is the fact that that evolution of where we started to where we now think the new normal is going to happen extremely fast because it's kind of being dragged along by the pace of everything else. So
Mm.
the idea that you went from traditional keyword research to query fan out style keyword research, that's going to be so quickly adopted that I think, when we start talking about keyword research a year from now, people will either understand it's fan out inclusive, or will start using fan out as a replacement for keyword research because people will understand the connotation. Um, I think it is moving that fast. I think that we will get there that quickly. Um, I do also believe that this is going to happen with a lot of topics in the world of search.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and this is a little challenging one, but so the next question I'm going to have here is crystal
Okay.
ball. And so this one, we're looking out
Okay.
into the future, we're predicting what we
Yeah.
think is going to happen. And
Mhm.
the question would be, how will machine trust signals evolve for content creators in the next year?
Okay. So that's actually fairly straightforward, at least in my view and in my opinion. Okay. Um, Please forgive my bias on this one because, as one of the people who launched schema.org, um, structured data, get it done. like, like, I don't know who else needs to hear this, right? But like, get it done. Don't ask, like, should I use this?
Yeah.
Yes, you should. And if there is something legitimately not in a library that you think should be in there, then you should propose it. But just keep in mind, you can't propose something that benefits you and not anyone else. It has to be a group benefit that is the only thing that will be added to the schema library. However, do not feel like the library is set. Like it is malleable. You can influence changes. Having said that, none of these systems care what structured markup you use. JSON, schema.org, RDFA, if anyone's still using that, like, it doesn't matter, right? Here's the real point. The point is you don't have to go back and retrofit your other work with something new. Like, you don't have
Hmm.
to worry about that. Okay. But those trust signals matter. And not just those trust signals, the trust signals that we all tried to game back in the day. Okay. Things like notations in other areas. So if you're a doctor, being a member of a professional association, being noted by your school as a graduate in their list of graduates, like, you might not care about that, but it's kind of important to the LLM, who doesn't personally know you, that you are in fact that doctor,
Mm.
that there is a direct connection there. And who better to maintain that than you? Because it's in your interest. So you should do that. Because I guarantee you, at some point, there's a bad actor who's going to go out there and try to claim that reference for themselves to try to game the system, because that's what bad actors do. Um, I think that, the trust signals of responsiveness, incredibly important, because you can imagine people asking these AI systems, I want this product, but I want to buy it from a company who has good customer service. Okay, well, if your history on responsiveness for reviews is that it takes you 6 months to reply to even good reviews, that one signal, that one signal is a vector. And that vector says, you suck against the query. So you will immediately be filtered out in favor of somebody who sucks less. And so on up until someone who is great, who happens to have the product, has it available, same price, and good customer service. Whoever hits that trifecta, quadfecta, whatever it is, they will be the answer that's brought back. If you really want to dive in on the trust things, then police your content, human in the loop on this stuff. Don't write stuff and put it out there and say, oh, that's good enough. No, like, fact check every single thing. Be diligent. Don't make mistakes. Fix your typos. How anyone can publish something with a broken link or a typo today is, it's beyond me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that I can't wrap my head around it. Not in a logical sense. I could understand it's a mistake, but again, you can, like, be an editor and fix that, you can like watch for that, right? So there are a lot of things that way from a credibility standpoint. And then there's the other side of it, which is kind of the footprint and the exhaust that you leave in the world. So over time, you are going to have conversations about the graffiti in your neighborhood and about this that's happening down the road and welcoming the new business to the block and doing all these things. And those kind of build up a social currency around your brand that tell these systems things about your entity that may matter to someone who's asking. And not because they ask specifically, but because it's the kind of person they are. And the LLM learns that about them. That's one of the things about LLMs. They learn a lot about you. The more you feed them, the more they get a sense of who you are, the more they bring you things that align with who they think you are. So, like, you have to think that way as if your company was a person. What kind of footprint do I leave behind? And what does my exhaust trail look like? Are people generally happy in my wake? Or are they generally perturbed in my wake? Because, again, those types of things are signals that the LLMs can actually pick up on today. And that will give them a sense of, are you the right answer in this context?
Yeah. Consistency too. Like to that point. It's looking
100%.
for the
100%.
consistency for a lot of that trust element. Next one's going to be a
Agreed.
toss up. So we're going to choose one or the other. And this is
Okay.
kind of bring us into real world type scenarios where obviously there's always limited resources, limited things that you can take on. And so for this toss up, it's going to be technical SEO infrastructure or human crafted content quality. So you have limited resources and you can only pick one to invest in. And let's assume you're starting from a relatively even, like your starting point is the level of technical debt or the level of content quality that you have on the site's relatively simple or even, let's say.
Yeah, it's not a glaring hole, because if you tell me that you have no ability to deploy structured data on your website, then I'm going to tell you you have to go dive in on the technical side, because that ultimately is going to trump whatever value I think the quality of content might improve. But if you're telling me that that is the sort of thing that's already covered, then I'm going to absolutely pick the quality and depth of content, because this is ultimately where humans still get to shine through with our knowledge, our decision making, our experiences, and how that impacts what we come up with. But it kind of doesn't matter how much of the technical you get done, right? Like, assuming everything continues to move forward from a technical perspective at the pace it's continuing right now, you could reasonably get to a point where a website is maxed out. There is not a lot more you can do technically to improve the website, okay? So if that is an existing possibility, that same possibility does not exist on the content side. You will never run out of content to explore. The concept of query fan out and the attendant fanning of every entity and every relationship and every topic that gets brought up as you fan out, you will never run out of the content side. You will always need humans in that loop. They will have to produce quality. And the quality, I think it's worth defining here as well, right? Like, we all bandy this around like there's some kind of standard for quality, okay? Like, everybody knows what the bar is. There we go. If you do this, you're higher quality, right? Quality is literally also defined, because I assume you can write in complete sentences in, proper language, syntax, and whatever language you're in, you're using the proper letters and everything. But we have to look at quality now. For most of our careers, we were told, don't build for the crawlers, build for humans, right? That's what we were told. That's what I told people. That's what we told clients. That's what we told coworkers. And it was a good ethos. It was correct and well aligned. You got to start building for the crawlers now, because they look for that information differently. So you're not trying to trick Googlebot here, right? Like, that's not what we're saying. What we're trying to do is create an inclusive, holistic environment that invites CC bot in, that invites all of the LLM bots in to see your content, which then means quality isn't just about sentence structure. It's not just about the words you're using. It's also about that chunking. It's about how you relate an entity, relationships, an entity, an explanation, like all of these pieces to make them retrievable by that crawler. So your quality as a concept is now broader than maybe it originally was when you thought, oh, I know where the bar is. Like, this is how we produce content. You know, it is changing a bit. But yeah, I'm taking content over technical moving forward.
And I would agree in that sense too, where I feel like the more and more we go down the path of like edge SEO and some of these like, ability to automate these type of like technical debt errors that might develop over time within a site, like you'd expect that to be something that could be solved easier and easier by
It
different tool
gets,
sets.
look, my experience inside the engine taught me it gets solved in one of two ways, but it gets solved. Either the engine, you get it done eventually. Okay, so you, like, I'm looking at like the M dot craze where we all went through that m.domain.com because that was your mobile version of your website, and nobody does M dot anymore because responsive design, and so you just don't need to worry about that anymore. So the tech solves the problem, or the consumer of it, the engine in this case, although I struggle calling these LLMs engines, but the engine, they don't care anymore. They find a different way to care about the same data that you have, but without the hang up on the technicality. And we see that all the time with the crawlers and with Google solving how I get into JavaScript and how I do these things and how I discover content in there. And so like some of this is an adaptation at the platform level. Some of it's going to be on you. But I do believe that that technical side moves forward in a much more linear lockstep sort of fashion than anything else, right? Like all the rest of it, that's the human squishy side of it that's not as easy to just say, oh, here it is, and there's like one and that's all. So yeah,
Mm,
that's there.
fair
So yeah,
enough.
Tyson, live with that.
One more, and this will be a short form one. So this one again,
Okay.
we're going to look at trend or trash, LLM TXT files,
Trash.
trend or trash.
Total trash. Total trash. We do not get that answer out fast enough. Total trash, right? Let's be crystal clear. Every crawler out there follows the robot.txt protocol. That's the protocol. All crawlers follow that protocol. Robots.txt. LLM.txt is an invention, kind of like domain authority from Oz. It's their own makeup. The engines don't look at domain authority to make any decisions. They don't factor that into anything on their end. In fact, you could say that, what was the, Google had this for years. The name for their DA, it was rank. It's escaping me now. I haven't talked about it for so long. Holy cow. It was 1 to 10. They had a rank rating for you and everybody was chasing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
We had
yeah.
it in the little toolbar at the bottom, and it was like, this was it was like if you had a higher 7 out of 10, then I wanted a link from you back to me, and that would help boost my score and all of that, right? And for the life of me, I'm a total block on the name of that. Um, PageRank. And those types of things are useful in that they are visualizations of a complex topic. Okay. For years, I wanted to create one when I was at Bing. The problem was the scale at Bing was, I think it was like 1 to 62,000 or something. So it didn't make sense. You had to translate that into something that was like rational for the human mind to wrap their head around, because like, how do I tell you score 400 out of 62,000? What does that even look like on a graph? You barely see the color. Like it just looks heartbreaking,
Mm,
But there was never any value in exposing it because what the PageRank score taught us was that people wanted to game scores like that. They used them for tracking their gamification of like, oh, well, if I get a link from here, then that'll boost mine. If I get a bunch of those links, that boosts mine, that boosts my ranking. And even though I don't deserve to be ranking well, I am ranking well, and I'll take the traffic and the revenue. And as long as I don't pop on a radar in Mountain View, I'll be okay. Like, and I think everybody's learned from those bad old days and kind of moved on. But the fact of the matter is, things like the LLM.txt those are made up. Conceptually, I get it. Somebody looked at it and went, "Oh, robot.txt is for the old crawlers. We need one for the new crawlers." No, you don't, because the new crawlers are still just crawlers, and they follow robot.txt. And point in fact, CCBot, the Creative Commons bot, is actually responsible for a whole bunch of the data that makes its way into these systems, because all of the systems access the data from Creative Commons bot. So if it's following robot.txt, you don't need anything else. That's it. Maybe in the future, but right now, I'm going to toss that in the trash.
Yeah, it's like you can create whatever TXT file you want. Doesn't mean anyone's going to look at it, but you can create them for sure.
Totally. And you know what? On that point, I think this is really important as well. So for your sitemaps and your robot.txt, spend the time to get to learn how the actual syntax should look, like what you should be putting into those files, especially robot.txt. I'll skip the old warning about how easy it is to block everything on your website and like screw yourself because, you put the slash in there in the wrong spot, right? But understand what control in there looks like. The default for every robot is do crawl. That is the default for a bot. It's its only reason for existence is to crawl a URL. So there is no do crawl directive. There is a do not call directive where you tell it what not to go into. So go through and understand all of that properly, because I see robot.txt files daily with all of this, go here, go here, go here. The crawlers ignore all that crap. You're building it, maintaining it. You think you're having some kind of influence on it? Nothing. If you didn't have that, it wouldn't impact the crawler at all. It's going to go. If it's a crawlable URL and it can find it, it's going to go. That's its only reason for existence. So, understand how those things matter, because when they do make updates or they do make changes to those things, it's really important to understand them and the impact that they have. So, there you go. And everybody, audit your robot.txt. If somebody in your IT department is blocking the bots from these AI systems, buy them a pizza, have a conversation. You need to get that rolled back. They need access.
Absolutely. Last question we got. So this one,
okay.
We've actually, I feel like this is a good summary kind of question, because it hits on some of the topics and points that we had earlier. And so this one's creating a game plan. And the scenario is you're building an SEO team and program from the ground up. So you're not inheriting any existing pieces or individuals, but everything's ground up. What are the key skill sets and roles that you would be targeting to build out your team?
Oh, okay. First off, look, easy answer to this is I just wrote 2 articles in the last 3 weeks on exactly this. So, there's that, right? But let me get into some of this. First and foremost, you have to start with your job descriptions. You have to understand the work that exists today. So the things we've talked about, vector analysis, retrieval tracking and auditing. So being able to go into the system, run the query, get the result, keep that in a report, see what that looks like over time. Not particularly a big skill, but having a familiarity with it and being able to understand what a citation looks like in each of the major platforms so that you know if you have been cited or not. Figuring out how to tease out within an answer if you have been cited. Because it's one thing to see your URL there or your domain there in a link. It's something different for you to know that that phrase that was used in the answer is a phrase from your website. So that requires a focus, right? An understanding of those systems. Get familiar with the concept of chunking, because it will have a major impact on how you write and how you organize content on a page. I would absolutely become a master at structured data. I would be a master at structured data all up. Easy for me to say. I've spent my career, getting on top of that. But at the very least, you have to know everything there is to know about whatever vertical you're in. And there is a vertical in there for you. So you have to dive deep on it, to the point where what I'm looking for in the skills of a person is, I don't want a traditional like SEO analyst or SEO manager job description. What I need is all of that plus these AI components. So when I go to scan for and I'm looking at resumes for people I want to hire, if they're not automatically aligned with this AI and with doing these things, and I don't mean they have a line in their resume saying, I use AI. Like, congratulations. That's like saying you breathe oxygen. All right. Good for you, you know? But if they're not calling those things out, then you're screened out. You're not going to get the interview to come and be a part of my team. I'm not delusional. I don't think people know how to do optimization for AI environments as a core competency at this point. I think that we're still very young. We've got people who understand parts of it, people who understand probably quite a bit of it, but they're relatively few. And and so I'm looking for people that are flexible. I want people that have shown an aptitude for learning new skills. Okay, so kind of want like, I think of it as the drippy T-shaped marketer. So you've got like, you're really deep in SEO, okay, but you've got drips coming down in all these other areas, right? Social and paid and content and technical. Like I need to see those things, because that's the type of mind that I can then hand the AI problem to and say, now learn this. And then that person will grow with me, because something that I realize is going to be a very real problem for us. I took a look at, I want to say like 100, it might have been 200 actual job descriptions that were posted live when I wrote the article. It's just a few weeks ago, so some of them are still live. It was a very low percentage, single digits, that actually even talk about AI in the job description. Now, I'm going to assume that these people are going to hire someone and probably not fire them in 6 months. Want that person to still be with them in a year or two. If you're going to hire someone and you're going to hire a skill set that's still going to be working for you in 2 years, why would you hire a skill set for a person who doesn't know what's coming next? And I'm not saying the employee needs to be, a soothsayer or a fortune teller. We know how things are evolving. You should be evolving your skills to match that evolution. So if you're hiring somebody without the skills, what is your plan to get them those skills? So something that is incredibly important for my team is training. I have to bring the training. I have to explicitly say, you're an expert level SEO. I need you to be an expert level AI SEO. And here's the differentiator. Here's the delta. Let's close it. Here's the plan. We have a meeting every day. It's 1 hour. It's from 2 to 3. It's mandatory. We're going to go over one thing a day for 8 weeks until everyone has access. We're going to build a hub, a knowledge hub internally, where you'll be able to look this stuff up on the fly as you need it. Like something. But I, as the program owner, I have to have that there. I am probably not looking for senior people at this stage, but I definitely want to identify people who can grow to be senior. I am going to need one, maybe two of those people, because it can't just be me running around the company trying to explain to the executive why we're doing what we're doing, or why it's important to do something that it's important to do. We need more people. It's inevitable. So, I think that I think that there's a lot of things, but I expect at this stage in the game, like if you're coming and you're applying for a job, well, at least if it were a job description written by me, baseline SEO stuff. If you show up asking me about keyword research or asking me about internal link architecture, or you're bragging about how using italics matters to search results, like I'm writing a job description to screen those people out. just like right out of the gate, right? Like, because I'm stepping higher, and that's what I think is the key takeaway is everything is stepping higher because we're all moving so much faster. That vibrational frequency is at a much higher level, and you've got to be able to step up. Like that's the critical part. Personally, I'm also like and I've done this in the past. I've built teams. I lean away from wallflowers. I want people that are more open and direct and willing to have a conversation and willing to go research something in their own time and argue with me about it from an educated point of view. Because I don't know everything. I can't know everything. And if you pull on a thread that I don't know, but it sounds like something I know, and I shoot it down, and you come back 2 days later and you're like, I think you missed something. Here's what I understand. Look, that's on me to be a big enough manager to say, yeah, totally misunderstood. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's dive deep on it. Because I don't see that as a reflection of me as a manager. I think it's better to be able to say, no, I don't know that. What do you know? And let's go for it, right? You build better team dynamic. You keep people longer. It creates a better atmosphere. But it's incredibly important to find those people because they have so much inherent and intrinsic value when it comes to learning new things and being able to bring them forward. That just pays dividends over and over and over again.
100%. And it's, I think, a common piece throughout like those examples is it's looking ahead, and it's not, you're
Yeah.
not aiming at just the immediate skill sets or like capabilities of today, but it's
And look,
who's going to grow with me in this direction.
yeah, you know what, Tyson? I don't even care how right people are. It's not about that. Like I'm see, because look, you can come in and you can have 3-4 years experience and be really good, right? Because maybe those 3-4 years, all you did was study traditional SEO. You can learn a lot in 3 to 4 years. And so you can be as well versed as any of us old timers with that kind of commitment to knowledge growth. And then you show up and I ask you about the future facing stuff and you just start riffing ideas coming off your head, this and that, whatever. I don't even care if you're right. It doesn't matter. All of us could be right. All of us could be wrong. It's the future. What I'm exploring is how your mind works. It's how you assimilate information. It's how you say, well, if we start here and the linear path we've taken takes us to this point, what's a logical next step? Now, you might get excited and go a little bit left or right of that so it doesn't quite line up, but that's not a fault. The fault is when you sit there and you say, oh, well, I would hope you would tell me what I need to learn next. That would be a fault moment because, yes, I will give you training in things I think is important. But if what you're telling me is you will never yourself go learn and you will always wait for someone to bring you something to learn, that's not the team I'm building.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dwayne, this has been a pleasure. I feel like we can keep going on this for quite some time. But in respect to your time, we're going to have to wind this one down. So that's going to wrap up this episode of the Voice of Search podcast. Thanks again to Dwayne Forrester from Unbound Answers for joining us. If you'd like to get in contact with Dwayne, you can find a link to his LinkedIn profile in the show notes, or you can get more information about Unbound Answers at unboundanswers.com. Also, be sure to check out his Substack, which will be in the show notes for some of these articles that have been referenced. And if you haven't subscribed yet and would like a daily stream of SEO content marketing knowledge in your podcast feed, hit the subscribe button on your podcast app or on YouTube, and we'll be back in your feed soon. With that, that's all for today. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you in the next episode.